Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Build Beautiful podcast, where tonight me and my guest, Alshire Tori, will be discussing Steen Eiler Rasmussen's 1959 book, Experience in Architecture. Alshire, thank you for being with me this evening. So, before we dive into the book,
thank guys, that's great to be here.
Oh yeah, thanks for being here, Paul. Before we get into the book, I'd just like to give a brief background to the author, Steen Eiler Rasmussen. So Steen Eiler Rasmussen was a Danish architect and urban planner who was a professor at the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts and a prolific writer of books and poetry. He was made a royal designer for industry by the British Royal Society of Arts in 1947. Steen Eiler Rasmussen was born on 19th of February 1898 in Copenhagen to Lieutenant Colonel and later General Christian Rasmussen and Anna Dorothea Young. He first apprenticed as a mason and then studied architecture at the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts from 1916 to 1918. In 1919, he set up his own practice. Rasmussen was a lecturer at the Academy from 1924 and became a professor in 1936. Among his students were Jan Utzon, designer of the Sydney Opera House, and Marion Pepler, who designed rugs for Gordon Russell in the 1930s. A number of other books which are famous that Rasmussen wrote are London, The Unique City, and Towns and Buildings. But tonight we will be discussing his most famous book, which is Experience in Architecture. So before we go into discussing the book, I'll just read for the audience the preface for the Experience in Architecture.
Okay.
So Rasmussen writes, when my previous book, Towns and Buildings, appeared, the learned English historian of architecture, John Summerson, wrote that the preface should have contained some reference to whom the book was written for. The reader should have been warned so that he would avoid being disappointed and annoyed when he discovered how elementary the book actually was. Therefore, I now hasten to state that I have endeavoured to write the present volume in such a way that even an interested teenager might understand it, not because I expect to find many readers belonging to that age group, but if it can be understood by a 14-year-old, then certainly it will be understood by those who are older. Furthermore, there is also some hope that the author himself has understood what he has written, which the reader is by no means always convinced of when reading books on art. In writing this volume, I naturally hope that my architect colleagues will read it and that they will find something of interest in the thoughts and ideas I have gathered during many years. But the book has a further aim. I believe that it is important to tell people outside our profession what it is that we are engaged in. In olden days, the entire community took part in forming the dwellings and implements they used. The individual was in fruitful contact with these things. The anonymous houses were built with a natural feeling for place, materials, and use, and the result was a remarkably suitable comeliness. Today, in our highly civilized society, the houses which ordinary people are doomed to live in and gaze upon are on the whole without quality. We cannot, however, go back to the old method of personally supervised handicrafts. We must strive to advance by arousing interest in an understanding of the work the architect does. The basis of competent professionalism is a sympathetic and knowledgeable group of amateurs, of non-professional art lovers. It is not my intention to attempt to teach people what is right or wrong, what is beautiful or ugly. I regard all art as a means of expression, and that which may be right for one artist may well be wrong for another. My object is in all modesty to endeavour to explain the instrument the architect plays on, to show what a great range it has, and thereby awaken the senses to its music. But even though I do not propose to pass aesthetic judgments, it is very difficult to hide one's likes and dislikes. If one wants to demonstrate the instrument of an art, it is not enough to explain its mechanics as a physicist would. One must, as it were, play a tune on it so that the hearer gets an idea of what it can do, and in such case, is it possible to avoid putting emphasis and feeling into the performance. The present volume is about how we perceive things that surround us, and it has proved difficult to find the right words for this. More than in any other book, I have struggled with my material in the attempt to formulate it simply and clearly, working it over and over again. But all my exertion would undoubtedly have been unavailing if I had not had illustrations to support the text. And then I think he just goes on to thank, people who helped create the book. But so hopefully that gave you some idea what the book's about. And then it goes into 10 chapters. So chapter 1 is basic observations. Chapter 2 is solids and cavities in architecture. Chapter 3 is contrasting effects of solids and cavities. Chapter 4 is architecture experienced as colour planes. Chapter 5 is scale and proportion. Chapter 6 is rhythm in architecture. Chapter 7 is textural effects. Chapter 8 is daylight in architecture. Chapter 9 is colour in architecture. And Chapter 10 is hearing in architecture. So was there any things that stood out for you, Al, in Chapter 1, basic observations?
I think for me, it was his comparison with that it is on equal with the fine arts such as painting and sculpture, which has been very much the defining aspect of the Renaissance period, and I definitely get from Rasmussen that he wants buildings to be as beautiful as possible, not just the basic functional aspect of a property, but that it must have something which can project a uniqueness, whether that is sort of inspirational from, let's say, because I mean a lot of the examples that we got here is Copenhagen. So
yeah, he mentioned the sidewalks, doesn't he, in Copenhagen, like the paving and the different paving surfaces.
Yeah, it's that it has to fit in. What you create has to fit in with its surrounding, but at the same time has to be unique from the other sort of properties throughout the centuries, I guess you could say. And as we mentioned before we went live, we were talking a bit about Bath, and you see that with the sort of architecture of Bath. You have buildings, whether it's from the 17th century, 18th or 19th century, or even to 21st century. The stone is exactly the same. The styles are different, but at a distance, at quite a bit of a distance, if you were to see the skyline and everything, you probably couldn't determine without a very keen eye the, I guess you say, older part of the city comparing to the new part, or determine what sort of age the certain buildings were constructed in. So that's what I get from him, that he's very much meticulous for the detail, that it should reflect beauty, but also it should encompass its surrounding, so it fits in. And I think for him, this architecture it's pretty much sculpting, like a statue, really. I think that's what I get from it. It's for him, it's like his own statue that he gets to sculpt. And the one building that that does stand out for me, which I would say is like a sort of is that point is I'm just going to go through because I saw it down here. It's the a good point reference actually that is the Palazzo Punta di Damati in Rome. So you see a building while on it what makes it unique is it's the hard form that you've got around the building. So if I don't know if we'll have the image up later, but you can effectively the building is on the sort of end of a street or a cross within the street, and it's got these I guess you could say brick spikes pointing out in the sort of
is that the Palazzo Ponte?
Sorry, projecting pyramids. Yeah, it's projecting like a pyramids, diamond shaped.
So, I'll try and get that up on the screen for everyone to see.
Yeah, so I mean that would be sort of example of creating sort of a unique style, which doesn't, I guess, sort of ruin the sort of aesthetics of the street, the neighbouring buildings. And this is something I think that like modern architecture, if you look at modern architecture sort of post-war onwards, I think this is where I mean, like London is a sort of horrific example of where you just have, I mean, in my opinion, very little care. You have your buildings, your Christopher Wren architect, and then you'd go on to your postmodernist one, and you have this clash of building styles, which are just completely. While people think it shows a sort of diverseness to its city, it's just a complete mess, and it's really not. It's just really ugly to look at. But I mean
they've ruined it, haven't they? Ruined the London skyline, haven't they? You know, with the skyscrapers, like everywhere you go, it's like every city, every major city you go in now, it's skyscrapers.
It's I mean, especially if you go to Southwark and the city and such. It's I mean, Southwark has changed quite a bit actually. It was surprising last time I went down there, with this case, it's quite clear that the for me in the sort of chapter here, it's about finding the sort of halfway house between how you can project what you want on a building, but not creating it in such a way which will cause great offence and great sort of what's the word? Clash with the city that you're building it in. And I mean, as I said, with previous examples, this is something that as time has progressed, architects, like Rasmussen here and such, it's been pushed to the limits, and that's perfectly fine. But it's about, I think with him, it's about putting a. I do think he puts like he knows where the limit is, and it's I mean, it's always fun to push everything to the limit that you can of how you're sort of presenting a sculpture or a piece of art or what have you. But it's about giving it purpose, I think. And I notice with a lot of his architecture, it has a purpose to it. It's not like some random sort of abstract concept of how can this be functional? Let's make sure this is functional. It's not about that. It's about creating something which has deep meaning and deep purpose to it.
Yeah, as you say, like those 10 chapters he lists, I think they're really good at. They detail all the different aspects of architecture, that the architect can use to enhance their building.
Yeah.
A couple of things that stood out for me in chapter 1 where it's a simple thing, but he talks about Santa Maria Maggiore Church, and he talks about, like a visitor going to Rome to visit this church, and there's a group of boys, like local boys outside, just playing like a ball game, and he just saying like the tourists like taking a photo of the church, and then leaving like 5 minutes later, they were, experience that place as deeply as say those kids who grew up there, and they're playing that ball game there. And then the other thing that stood out to me as well was I think like the different balls used in English games, as well as I think he talks about like the different like tennis balls and cricket balls and golf balls or football, like the different textures they have.
Do you have an image of the church that he that you're referencing? Just we can have on the screen. We can have a look.
This is the image he has in his book there.
Oh yeah.
So it just says like it's a famous church that people come to visit in Rome, but that oftentimes it's just something, I guess, something to tick on a box, to have a look at rather than necessarily experience. I think it's interesting how he mentions like Wedgwood cups as well. So he talks about how it's like the process of making a Wedgwood cup. It has that soft appearance.
Yeah.
But it's it's a hard material that has a soft appearance, and then he talks about how like different objects can have. They can have like a hard appearance, but have like a soft material, I think, as well.
Yeah.
I think he tries to relate that to architecture as well, in terms of like surfaces, like smooth surface or a hard surface.
Yeah, I brought up I got an image here of it. I was just looking at another sort of angle of it. It's it's very interesting because you have your marble. So it's got its traditional sort of Roman aesthetic to it, and it's got then a sort of very I guess you say sort of 17th, 18th century extension. It does look like that the church in question has several extensions to it. I don't know how old it is actually. Come to think of it, it's let's have a look at how old it is. Completed. Yeah, 1743. It's quite interesting because a lot of these churches in Rome were built upon either pagan temples or older churches which have been rebuilt on for purposes of as projects and everything by the papacy. I mean, from what I can see here, I've just had a look at the history of it. It does look like there was it was built. The church was built under the, I guess you could say, Gothic. Is it Gothic time? Oh, is that it you got up there?
No, that's Beaver Cathedral. I think that's covered in the second. That's covered in the second chapter.
Yeah.
Well, the
Yeah.
S. Maria.
Yeah, I was just going to. I was just saying that with the Santa Maria one that we're mentioning here, it it is quite interesting because the chapel itself, probably like the interior of itself, is has a lot of elements of the sort of 5th century building, and then it's the sort of outer basilica of it dates to the sort of Avignon papacy, and then sort of the sort of modern front of it is from the 18th century construction. So it's got like 3 layers. The innermost bit is obviously the oldest part, and then as you go out, it's you get the the sort of newer part, the more sort of the 18th century bits, sort of modern facade. So that's quite an interesting one. It's in, and again, as you said, I mean the actual piazza out front with the steps and everything. It's the same stone, really, that the Romans would have used, probably back in its imperial heyday.
Yeah, it's a lovely church.
It is, and it's a very spacious front as well. You could have parades. You could have a mass. So you could have your maybe not the Pope, but some religious figure in the balcony parts, and you could feel the. Actually, I'm thinking back. I think popes have conducted mass from this church before, because there is there's a massive open space deliberately, so that people could gather outside. I'm looking at a lot of the paintings. It seems that you have it was used as a sort of recreational area, plus sort of main road for carriages back in the day.
Right, so moving on to chapter 2, what were the key elements of chapter 2 that stood out for you, Al?
Okay. So
chapter 2 covers solids and cavities.
Okay, let me just get. Sorry, I'm just my for people who watch it, I've got a PDF of the book here, which I've got on my computer, and it's freezing a bit, so I'm just having to wait until it's Okay, hold on a sec. That's not right. Okay, let's just get this back to the beginning. Yeah, it's just freezing at the moment.
I think chapter 2 is interesting. How he contrasts.
Sorry. What page? Can you just give me a page number for it? So I can jump to it, because my computer's just messing around at this point.
I think 40.
40. Thank you.
Roughly.
I think that's about right. Okay, hold on a sec.
Oh, sorry, that's Church of St. George, Nordlingen. 44 is Beaver Cathedral.
Right.
I think it starts talking about the Gothic with the Nordlingen church, and then goes on to the Beaver Cathedral.
Yeah, I got the. I think I was going to talk about the Which was Nordlinger, because that's the one that's tied to the Knights of Malta. The art sort of it was the St. John's. I believe it belonged to the St. John's, or it had ties to the Knights of St. John.
That's true.
Particular one there. So I mean that one. It's quite an interesting one because there is a map. I believe there's like a map of the medieval city above it on page 41. And that, I mean, just goes into what I was saying about my fascination with the sort of sporadic and organic nature of medieval cities, where it's the planning of it is it's never really properly planned. It's how it's really formed. The only thing that you can say with your medieval cities, it will always be built along a river network of some fashion, at least, or coastal aspect of it. But so the church itself, it's city of Nordlinger, and it is apart from its relationship to the Knights of St. John, which stood out. It's got a very sort of unique dome. Nothing sort of Italian, sort of like fancy of a Renaissance, sort of like an Italian sort of Florence or what have you. It's
the Planiero, the town.
Yeah, the city. Yes. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. So. And
what's interesting about those towns as well is. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I believe it sits in the centre, or relatively close to the centre of the town. The cathedral in question here.
Yeah, it's roughly in centre. It's as you say, you got this wonderful organic network of streets and squares, and it looks like the plan of the town doesn't look. It looks like it was just, no rhyme or reason to it. It was just, we need a building here, and we'll just build to the street edge or to the town square. And
I do believe that. I mean, Nordlinger that's in northern Germany, if I remember correctly. Northeastern Germany. I mean, I may not be correct, but I believe that this probably was one of the Carolingian towns which were built after Charlemagne's conquest of the Saxons and sort of other proto-Germanic people in that region. And you had same thing with Hamburg and what have you. You had like these what became these garrison forts, which then sprung up into towns and what have you. So it really you're seeing I guess the origins of a sort of military settlement, which then just grew naturally via trading hubs and increase population and what have you.
Yeah, from there as well, the author goes on to talk about I think Beaver Cathedral as well, and how like the Gothic, celebrated the solid form of architecture. You could see like the structure of it, and like the rough materials it was made out of, and then goes on to contrast that with the cavity, what he would call a cavity, but what do people generally call it? They don't call it a cavity; they call it. But he gives the example of, I think, an Indian temple, like carving rock out of a cave to make the space, and how it gives like a different effect to a building.
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess you could say it's somewhat like an illusion, really. It's and it's amazing how many cathedrals and churches have that I guess sort of create aspects of an illusion. So I mean, I'm thinking the sort of the famous dome in Florence, the at the
Il Duomo.
Santa Maria Duomo. That's I mean that sort of dome itself is incredibly small from within. Large part of it is because the problem that they had with the dome was how to construct it in a way which doesn't fall in on itself, because there was no real means to keep it together for many of the architects that I think it was Cosimo Medici hired to put together. And then of course you had I'm really sorry because I forgot his name now. The one that the architect fallback who
Brunelleschi.
Yeah, who got the egg and just planted it down, and it was about effectively creating like an illusion aspect where you from within it's sort of reinforced upon reinforced, but then obviously from the outside it's this wonderful dome, and effectively you use just gravity to keep it together, keep it up and standing together. And it's amazing. There are many churches where you have many buildings which you have similar aspect. I mean, I think it's Bath Abbey as well. If you walk in there, one thing you see is how spacious it is. And how colourful it can be, especially if you go in there in a summer's day when the sun is out and everything. But a large part of that is obviously the stained glass, where it when light projects through. It's in many ways it's like there's no roof in some occasions, especially when it's extremely bright. So. Yeah, when with the one here in Nordlinger, I think there is a sort of aspect to that of like an illusional sort of the sort of illusion aspect to it. As you mentioned earlier, like with the temple carving out there in the temple.
Yeah, I think it shows like the flying buttresses as well of the Beaver Cathedral to show, how like I guess it's like the Gothic style of architecture is all about showing the structure and I get honesty to materials. Showing the structure, the solid nature of the materials, whereas with a cavity form of building, which it gives the example of a couple of examples of the cave temple at Kali in India. The temple was hollowed out of rock, and then he goes on to talk about, I think, Bramante's plan for St. Peter's in Rome. I'll show that one up on the screen. So it gives you examples of St. Peter's, Bramantes, St. Peter's in Rome, and you can see here on the plan how it's almost like rock. Rock has been, that has been carved into, like the stone has been carved into to create like a cavernous space.
Mm. And of course, you from this perspective, it's quite obvious. You see many crosses as well. So it's in that there is still that sort of traditional layout of a sort of churches that came before you, and I mean, yeah, it's
like it doesn't tend to stress like the solidity as much as like
no.
the Gothic cathedral does.
No, and it's very. I mean, it's look. I mean, a lot of the Goth. I mean, you can also derive it down to sort of styles when it comes to later Protestantism and Catholicism. I mean, the dome became a very. It became the most prominent sort of aspect of Roman Catholic cathedral, while your Gothic, the more Gothic ones like that we saw at Nordlinger in Germany, that would be the sort of standard one that you would see in predominantly Protestant countries. I mean, you look at Protestant churches across Denmark, and the sort of Nordic countries, whether it's stone or wood, it's in a very, very Gothic, similar Gothic styles to that. And then places like here in England, we have a sort of a mix and match. So your St. Paul's will have a very papal-esque dome, but then you can go up into the Black Country and everything. You see these churches which are very, very Gothic in nature, very dark stone as well, and that it there definitely is like this sort of geographic, sort of cultural divide when it comes to these sort of style of buildings.
The northern and the southern European mentality.
Yeah,
as you say, it's like I guess
and
that the Catholic and the it's like the Catholic and Protestant, as you say.
Yeah, it's sort of what became because again, like you took Christopher Wren and his when he was wanting to build St. Paul's, I believe it was. I don't think it was. It might have been the Archbishop. It could have been just the Bishop of London at the time. Was really, really dedicated. He was a staunch Protestant at the time, and was really, really opposed to the idea of the dome, because the belief at the time was that it was seen as far too papal, far too indulgent in that matter, and this was off the back of the Great Fire, which many blamed on on Catholics, and so you had aspects of hostility when it came to certain architectural types if it didn't fit in with the group, but. I mean, I think with England and that there was certain exceptions to this.
I guess famously you had the Counter-Reformation, didn't you, as well, which is, I think, what the Baroque grew out of.
Yeah, Counter-Reformation, the Baroque, and it was a. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how many cathedrals adopted sort of domes in that period, because I'm just trying to think of like Roman Catholic cathedrals in at that moment, at that sort of point in time, the more newer Catholic countries. So you're looking at the Spanish colonies in Latin America, or the Portuguese colonies in Brazil, even the Philippines. I mean, I'm just thinking like Mexico City. I believe the cathedral there has a dome. It definitely became sort of a pinnacle symbol for that. For the Catholic Church, and of course at that time it was the Jesuits. I don't know how. I honestly don't know how impactful the Jesuits were when it came to the architecture of how churches should be presented. Because they were obviously the sort of key players in the Counter Reformation. So I don't know what legacy they had, if any, on the architecture side of churches and cathedrals.
I'll try and show just two more buildings that I showed in this chapter. I think he gave the contrast in this chapter between the solidity of Copenhagen City Hall. He contrasted that with like the cavernous nature of Copenhagen police headquarters. Just trying to find a good image of that. So Copenhagen. So I can't find a good image of it. One that, I can't find an aerial view, but that's the example he gives in the book of a building that expresses solidity, whereas the Copenhagen police headquarters, it has this is, you can see it here with this building.
Ooh.
There's lots of like internal like courtyards. She says, it's like a cavernous space. The cavities, the architects, took that mass of material and he's carved those courtyard spaces into the building. Whereas with the other building, you don't get that.
No,
as much.
It does. The building does remind me a lot of Whitehall in London. I don't know if this any inspiration. I don't know if there's any inspiration directly from this, but that it reminds me a lot of Whitehall. It's quite interesting. It definitely. I mean, the way that it's looking on from it's definitely a cementing authority in its sort of uniform approach, because there isn't very much detail in the exterior. It's
quite austere.
It's very uniform. It's very fitting for a police station, really, because it's sort of projecting sort of nothing to sort of give away. It's probably really what you would have as a sort of police station. And as I said, it reminds me of it very, very much reminds me of Whitehall and several of the buildings around there that sort of back onto the Strand. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. And of course, I think is that a courtyard in the middle?
I think there's three or four. Yeah. I think there's 4 courtyards in total.
4 courtyards. Yeah. So you have like in quite nice enclosed point. that can be used for. It's been designed in a way where you can fit a fair amount of people in there. I don't know what the actual functional aspect of it would be used for.
Yeah, I'm not too sure myself.
Key station. I don't know. I look at it and I think execution. You know, I don't know. I wouldn't.
I mean, it could be a great.
I don't know if it's point.
It looks like it could be a great space to have a gardening for the workers. You know, to sit and relax on the lunch breaks or when they have a break. But it seems like it's just a concrete slab that they've just done nothing with it.
It seems concrete. Yeah.
Because I think it's Portcullis House in London. They've done quite a nice interior garden space.
Yeah, there's a fair few places actually in London who sort of managed to do like a good sort of interior space. I mean, you could look at in Cheltenham with GCHQ building, which is like a similar thing. It's like the building is pretty much like a donut shaped with a massive, larger than this one, massive interior, which is pretty much gardens and benches and such. It's very I don't know what I can't think of the functional sort of reason for this, unless it's like for traversing parts of the building. You get to, instead of walking through like countless corridors, which can be tiresome, boring, or something, you actually have to walk out of the building into the open air to walk to different sort of parts of the site. Maybe I don't know if that's traversing the building. It could be a functional aspect of that. Looking at it.
So we'll try and cover a bit of chapter 3, like the last 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a very interesting chapter where it compares the Porta di Santo Spirito in Rome by who was it by? It was by Antonio da Sangallo. They compared that with Michelangelo's Porta Pia.
Yes.
I'll just bring up Porta di Santo. So that's it up there.
Yes. And I mean, straight off the bat, one thing I see immediately, I don't know if you see this as well, but I see immediately a Roman general who's come back from great victories in the East, and the Senate has, in his honor, built a
triumphal arch.
An arch. Triumphal
and they
arch
got halfway through.
His conquest of. They got halfway through, and then they decided to build a building across the top of it. That's that. Yeah, I mean, again, yeah.
So, I mean, interesting things the author talks about.
The history of,
architecturally, interesting things the author talks about is like the deep recesses of the. What was it? Talks about So with the niches, like the deep recesses of the niches, you wouldn't find that in like a traditional one built in Rome. But as this was built in the Renaissance period, he talks about how you get like interesting effects with like lights and shadow due to like the niche having like a deep recess. So maybe this photo sort of
that's better.
see it a bit better.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, because this is where I bet you if you got a Roman architect from the Republic period and showed them this image, there would probably be a sort of somewhat of a discuss, because there would be the discuss would be, why is it hollow and why is it got, because the purpose of it is to show a story. So if you see a triumphal arch, you would have carved in troops sacking a city, defeating an army. It would be like the bio tapestry. It would tell a narrative. And of course, in this scenario, because the purpose of the building is to emulate, but also just with a functional aspect of building, it is somewhat hollowed out, because you can't really what images could you put on there apart from without because you don't have the sort of military legion sort of triumphal aspect. You put religious ones maybe, but again, it doesn't really fit, does it? So it has to have it has to be designed in the way where it
probably, as you say,
like a sort of shadow effect.
Probably, as you say, they put like religious or mythological sculptures onto the arch.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's quite an interesting point you raised as well about like the Romans as well, probably not liking the arch because it'd be quite alien to them. I imagine it'd be the same for them if they saw, say, the aspects of Renaissance architecture we take for granted, like the pilasters and the broken pediments of Michelangelo as well. Because I don't think they had them.
Yeah, I don't believe so. I think I mean, personally, I think they probably would be horrified with a lot of the Renaissance and sort of architecture. To be honest, I think they'd be pretty disgusted by it. But yeah, that's just something I noticed. And Michael, just the Porta Pia Rome. That was the other one I was going to say.
Michelangelo's.
This particular, yeah,
I'll just get it on screen. Just one more interesting thing as well. The author points out about that building is how as well.
Hello.
The column, the column's like half. The column is like half full, half done. He says it's like emphasizes the like he says the column's emphasized more. He says the solidity of the column is emphasized more due to it, being half finished and due to it not having like the sculptural reliefs of the Capitol on top. Just wanted to mention that before we move on to the next building.
Yes, fantastic.
Michelangelo.
Sorry, you just cut out a tiny bit towards the end of that.
Right.
On my bit, I'm not putting my into it though.
So this is the Porta Pia in Rome as well, and I think this is a gateway as well. I think they're both gateways. They're both gateways.
Yeah. I was going to hold on a sec. I'm gonna. Oh, here we go. Now this one, and it might. There'll be some people who may not see the similarities at first, but it was in the book that it reminded me of the Florentine Palazzo Vecchio. Is it Vecchio? And it's the it's where they Vecchio, sorry, Vecchio, and the seat of power in Florence, and it was of course famously where the Pazzi conspirators were hung and drawn and sort of what have you from the tower there to the public below, and were left hanging in the building for several days. Very similar design, sort of with like the sort of roofing, almost like a fort. It looks like a sort of strip away the certain aspects of the building. Both of them, they look like you have battlements. It looks like a sort of battlements with a fort and everything, and it's just something that I noticed. There's a sort of striking similarity there between the two, because I mean the purpose of the one here in Florence is that it was to project power, because it was the seat of power for the Florentine Republic, and Maggiore just Porta Pia in Rome. It's this one is definitely projecting power of some kind, at least. It's
got a lack of harmony and balance, hasn't it, compared to like the previous one?
Yeah, I mean,
as the author points out.
Yeah, it's not like I mean, you definitely tell it's not a church or cathedral. For the uninitiated, I mean, looking at it, it's I don't know. It's an interesting one. It's not.
It's almost like postmodern in a way, like some of Michelangelo's architecture, because it's playing games with the language, isn't it, of the classical architecture. It's things like the broken pediments and the pilasters.
Now, some of it, the dare I say, and this might. I don't want to get your channel in trouble, but it could it be of course, another important sort of artistic movement that came out of Italy was the futurist movement, and the mid-century Italian Italians that adopted it, and some aspects of it, especially at the front where you have the sort of sculptures on it, look quite similar to that in some regards. If you were to show me this and say, oh, this was constructed under the mid-century Italian guy, I would I'd be like, oh, I'd believe that. I wouldn't really question it, to be honest. It's it seems something from that era, but then he did build quite a lot of civic buildings in Rome and everything, with the blend again of the sort of Roman and then with the more sort of more modern futurism style of civic buildings, which had overused columns. Horrendous, criminally overused columns. But it's again. I mean, there's a lack of windows as well. It's really strange building, actually. It'd be interesting to see what the light is on the inside, because I don't know how they're. there mustn't be. I can't think of how there could be much light within the building, or natural light, I should say.
I think it was a gateway. It was meant to be a gateway.
Yeah. Yeah. I just say if you go to the back of it, I was just say if you look at it, I don't know if there's any. I got one of the side of the building. It's not very good one. It's Google View, but again, it's very strange because you've got windows. There is like the windows on the side are really sort of uninteresting. They're not really sort of there's nothing really to them. It's just carved out squares. But I noticed that from a lighting point of view, there has been a fairly modern sky sort of screen installed on the two buildings beside the between the two sort of gateway points. There's been like skylines put in place, probably because again of the lighting aspect. Because but then I again
you see that I think you see it there, as you say, like they've added that skylight onto the roof, as you say, to probably add more light into the building. And
I would say so, because
image there, what you were talking about, the windows at the side of the building.
Yeah, there's nothing sort of, no really effort really done for the windows. I mean, it's been a lot of the attention has been done on the arch and the front of the building. It's that's been the sort of main attention that's been sort of placed upon it. It's just interesting because I don't know what the because Rasmussen, he talked about the sort of importance of a sort of built functional aspect of the building, how it it's used and everything. I don't know how functional the two sort of properties either side here, how it could be used effectively. Like it just beyond it being a good sort of access point as a road, which or walk through, which would have been in its time. But I don't know the I don't know how it could be sort of functionally used at its full potential, let's say. I don't know how you could how it would operate in that regard.
And 11.
Oh,
Hello.
hello. Sorry, you just cut out again. You just come.
Oh, right. I know. I'm just saying. I know you wanted to wrap up around about 11.
Oh yeah.
So it's about 10 past now, I think.
Yeah, that yeah. Yeah. Do you want to add any add any further comments about
No, maybe pick this up again at some point in the future.
Yeah. I just had actually a look at the porter is actually it sits within striking distance of the Iranian walls, which is quite interesting.
Wikipedia says it's a gate in the Aurelian walls.
Yeah, that because I mean, large parts of the Iranian wall walls that they don't stand due to the many armies that have passed through Rome since the fall of the empire. It's like the city, the city of London walls, which were that's built by the Romans. The largest chunk of it's actually outside the Tower of London, but apart from that, it's non-existent everywhere else. It either runs along a road or a street or somewhere like that. So, but no, yeah, I'd say we can probably catch up the next chapters, maybe in like a future episode.
Yeah, sure. Right. Thanks for listening, everyone, and see you next time. I'll leave you. I'll leave a link to Al's Twitter in the show's description in the bottom. Al, is there anything you want to show before we go?
Not really at the time. I have my usual channel content that I'm still doing at the moment. You check it out. It's like rank punditry if you're into that sort of stuff. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, with the sort of my own sort of twist to it or what have you, my own perspective, then you can come check it out. It's I think it's quite good. I do have like odd episodes where I talk about whatever I want to talk about, which and I have like sort of several guests on which you probably watch their content as well on YouTube. But no, that's about it. Thanks for having me on. It's been really, really fun to be on here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, pal. Yeah, hopefully have you on again in the future. Okay, everyone.
Yeah.
See you later. See you later, everyone. Bye.
Bye.